everybody knew that Puff took Tupac blueprint and changed Biggs and Bad Boy in.
So we knew something was going on. We just started following him.
Two young paramedics
I was driving.
were working nearby.
I had been a medic for roughly 5 years.
I was 22 years old.
Jim and Shane, now Henderson firefighters, have asked us not to use their last names because they're concerned.
Tupac Shakur's legacy refuses to rest. Now, explosive new claims hint that he may have pulled off the greatest vanishing act in music history. From whispers of body doubles to a secret life in Cuba, the rumors just won't die. And with Diddy's empire collapsing under scandal, the timing makes it all the more shocking. Could Tupac still be alive, watching from the shadows? Stick around. By the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought was the truth.
$1 million check, right, that they put on Tupac to get him hit.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is that if Puff had said on a couple of records that he'll pay $1 million to, but he was just talking to people randomly. So now everybody said that, and Keefy D said that Puff told them that he'll give him $1 million. House of Blues, Tupac was alive at the time. Tupac was in a white drop-top Rolls Royce, Suge was in a red one. We rose up to Pac. Puff tried to speak to Pac. He like, yo, what up, Pac? Pac looked at him and turned his head. Puff and Pac was cool at one time. We know this. Mopreem said that they was gonna sign the Bad Boy. So if he's gonna sign to Bad Boy, it was because of Corey and them.
Sean Diddy Combs' downfall feels ripped straight from a movie script, except this time, reality is darker than fiction. The empire, once wrapped in luxury, swagger, and billion-dollar branding, is collapsing, crushed under federal indictments and court filings that read less like legal documents and more like crime thrillers.
If Pac gotta die, Big gotta die, or Suge Knight go to jail. Something's gotta change. He on the red carpet with Tupac shirt on. Who's obsessed with who?
As unbelievable as it sounds, whispers claim he wasn't just a flashy mogul, but the mastermind tied to one of hip-hop's darkest mysteries, the night Tupac Shakur's reign ended in Las Vegas. Prosecutors now point to racketeering, exploitation rings, and secret tapes that could lock him away for life. His name reportedly appears nearly 50 times in sealed police transcripts linked to that fateful ambush. And while Diddy maintains his innocence in a New York courtroom, one thing is undeniable: former allies are finally breaking their silence.
His image. Pac was the first one on the scene wearing Versace shirts. He went and got the same Versace shirts Pac had. Which, all right, some dudes would do that. You'll never catch me wearing something else.
An insider claims the truth is being buried to protect powerful brands. According to them, those tied to Diddy's infamous sessions are desperate to keep their secrets hidden because if the public ever found out, their entire images would shatter. That's where Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, steps in. Unlike most, Deal was inside the circle, riding in armored SUVs, watching from penthouse suites. And now he's dropped a revelation so explosive that Diddy's current charges look like just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Deal insists Tupac Shakur wasn't the reckless hothead the media painted him to be. He was calculating, playing a deeper game. Tupac knew a setup was coming. He understood the bounty on his head had skyrocketed, and instead of waiting to be trapped, he staged his own disappearance. The Machiavelli persona wasn't just an artistic reinvention, it was a survival strategy. By deceiving his enemies, Tupac escaped America and began a new life abroad under another name. And here's the twist that flips the narrative on its head. Even Diddy, the man allegedly behind the hit, was fooled. Picture him sitting in boardrooms, celebrating platinum records, convinced his greatest rival was gone, never realizing Tupac had slipped away. Deal's testimony doesn't frame Diddy as the ultimate puppet master, but as a player who got outsmarted in his own game.
So you believe Diddy, he only got with Sarah Chapman because Pac, he had her at one point?
And there was a bet in the office. Sarah was messing with an NBA basketball player. Puff bet all of them believe that he could get it within 2 weeks. $100. So she actually was a $100 bet that he got.
Picture Diddy gloating in private, convinced he wore the crown unchallenged, only to one day face the possibility that his greatest rival never truly fell. It's almost Shakespearean. The East Coast versus West Coast saga, long remembered as a tale of bloodshed and tragedy, suddenly shifts into something more like a masterfully staged long con. And if that's true, the very foundation of hip-hop history begins to tremble. Even Gene Deal put it plainly. Yes, Tupac and Biggie had their differences, but it never cut as deep as people believed. The real story, he suggests, was always unfolding quietly in the shadows.
About the other one as well. Where do you stand with what happened with Tupac? Do you think Biggie was a part of it? You think Puff was a part of it?
I never heard Puff say anything about doing anything to Tupac or Suge.
Right.
I've heard people around Puff say things about that, but I never. Came back downstairs, he was heated. He said, yo, Gene, I got 126 employees, and these people depend on me for their livelihoods. If these white folks thought or they would think that I had anything to do with any kind of, they wasn't going to, and they not going to with me. He said, I'm a businessman. I'm about making money, but something gotta change. I don't give a if Pac gotta die, Big gotta die, or Suge Knight go to jail. Something's gotta change. And he took upstairs, he turned around and walked back upstairs. And it didn't dawn on me what he said. And then my man looked at me and Bun was like, yo, that dead big.
The clues were always hiding in plain sight. Fans dissected the Don Killuminati, the 7-Day Theory, with its chilling subtitle and the cryptic line, Exit Tupac, Enter Machiavelli. Some even noticed that Machiavelli could be rearranged into Am Alive. For years, people dismissed it as dark symbolism from an artist obsessed with mortality. But what if it wasn't symbolism at all? What if it was a code, a roadmap from someone who had studied Machiavelli's lessons on deception and survival? If Gene Deal is right, that album wasn't a requiem, it was a blueprint. And then come the odd details that never sat right. The coroner listed Tupac at 6 feet tall and 215 pounds, even though his friends knew him as 5'10" and 168. The autopsy photo with its blurred tattoos and strange angles failed to convince skeptics. The cremator who allegedly handled Tupac's body retired immediately after and vanished. That disappearance sparked decades of speculation. Was he silenced after helping to switch bodies? Or was the corpse not Tupac's at all? The grief was real. One mourner admitted that losing Tupac felt like being frozen in time. Life moved forward, but those who loved him remained trapped in the moment. And yet, the stories refused to fade. Former security officer Michael Nice swore to TMZ that he personally smuggled Tupac out after the hit was ordered. He claimed Fidel Castro himself approved the escape and sanctioned a body double to sell the illusion. According to Nice, Tupac wasn't killed in Vegas. He was flown out with Black Panthers at his side, first to Barbados and then to Cuba. Nice described Tupac as calm, even helping co-pilot the plane, shaking hands with his rescuers like a man stepping into legend. But before Nice could release proof, he was found dead under mysterious circumstances. Coincidence or another casualty in keeping the truth buried? Still, the sightings continued. Havana locals whispered of a man who looked uncannily like Tupac strolling the streets in a bandana and shades. His beard was thicker, his frame heavier, but the eyes, those unmistakable eyes, never changed.
How Tupac Shakur would look like if he were alive today.
Some say Tupac was spotted in Belize, others in New Jersey. Online, grainy photos claim to show him alongside Beyoncé or even 50 Cent. Most are written off as doctored images, but they keep the fire alive. One insider once summed it up bluntly, no one's been arrested because Tupac's not gone. He's somewhere smoking a Cuban cigar. The more the threads are pulled, the less it looks like a crime scene, and the more it resembles a stage play still unfolding. Even Tupac's mother hinted at it once, saying he chose to leave quietly. Was that poetry or a coded admission that he walked away on his own terms? Add to that the endless stream of posthumous albums so fresh it feels like his voice never stopped and the mystery only deepens. When Whispers connected it all back to Wendy Williams' strange claims, the circle returned to Gene Deal. His revelation remains the most explosive. Tupac wasn't blindsided that night. He knew betrayal was coming. He understood the price of independence in an industry where moguls acted as both kingmakers and executioners. With millions on his head, he refused to bow. Instead, he flipped the script. Machiavelli wasn't just a stage name, it was his survival code. Deal suggests Tupac may have built a secret life in exile, biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to return and expose the man who thought he'd erased him. And the cracks in the official story? They appeared almost immediately. Rumors swirled about a body double switched into Tupac's hospital bed to stage the final act. The coroner's report didn't match. The rushed cremation raised alarms. To some, the chaos outside the hospital wasn't panic at all, it was choreography. By the time Suge Knight stumbled out in bandages, Tupac may have already been en route to a hidden runway, vanishing into the Caribbean night. The press releases, the blurred photos, the contradictions, maybe they weren't just sloppy details, maybe they were cover, and maybe, just maybe, the man himself slipped away.
Somebody met me at the back and said, "Go help my buddy," and in my buddy's car. So
which ended up being Suge Knight. Whole car, was riddled with bullet holes.
Death Row Records co-founder Suge Knight was the driver of the BMW Shakur was down in.
We brought the gurney up,
over,
just pulled him out.
Pulled him out, and that's when, everybody was yelling, Tupac, Tupac, and I leaned over to the cop, and I go, this guy has the same nickname as that rapper. And the cop, looked at me and leaned over and was like, this is him.
We saw Suge in the back of the House of Blues. Tupac was alive at the time. Tupac was in a white drop-top Rolls Royce. Suge was in a red one. We rose up to Pac. Puff tried to speak to Pac. He like, yo, what up, Pac? Pac looked at him and turned his head. Didn't say nothing to him, got right back on his phone. Riz said, yo, F him, speak to Suge. Suge is the boss. Puff said something to Suge. He said, yo, what up, Suge? He said, what's up? He said, yo, you think we got any problems out here? Suge said, I don't know no problems that y'all have. You think we good out here? He said, you should be. Suge just, I don't know any problems you got, bruh. And Pac was alive then.
And now, with Diddy facing federal charges of exploitation and coercion, the irony couldn't be clearer. He may have believed he pulled off the perfect crime back in 1996, but if Tupac is still alive, then Diddy's so-called triumph was nothing more than a hollow illusion. One critic didn't hold back, calling him a man with no class, no compassion, and no soul, just corruption rotting from the inside out. They went further, saying once this trial ends, the world should never hear his name again.
Adios, God. He was knocking down all the women that he thought Pac was knocking down. And what I mean is having sex with them. Why would you want to have with women you know for sure a dude that was once cool with you?
The contradictions, the confessions, the strange autopsy details, they all circle back to one chilling possibility. What if that night in Vegas wasn't the end, but the beginning of the greatest disappearing act in music history? What if the bullets were just part of the illusion and the real Tupac has spent nearly 3 decades in the shadows, waiting for his moment to return? If that's true, then the story isn't over. In fact, we may be approaching the moment when Diddy's darkest fears finally surface.
Puff and Pac was cool at one time. We know this. Mopreme said that they was going to sign the Bad Boy. So if he's going to sign to Bad Boy, it was because of Corey.
Beneath all the swirling theories, one thread keeps resurfacing: the Black Panthers. Tupac wasn't just another rapper caught in the crossfire of the music industry. He was born into a family of activism and rebellion. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was a Panther. His godfather, a militant organizer, spent decades clashing with federal agencies. With roots that deep, it isn't hard to imagine a safety net already in place when Los Angeles and Las Vegas became too dangerous. Some insiders claim the Vegas shooting wasn't chaos at all, but a signal for a carefully planned extraction executed by people who knew how to move in the shadows. And if any group had the means, the discipline, and the motivation to pull it off right under the government's nose, it was them. What greater act of resistance than protecting the most outspoken rapper of his generation? The theory gains even more weight when you remember his aunt, Assata Shakur, still one of America's most wanted after escaping prison and resurfacing in Cuba. If she could vanish from federal custody and find refuge on an island that defies Washington, why couldn't her nephew do the same? Whispers suggest the very same underground channels that smuggled Assata to Havana may have reopened for Tupac. For the Panthers, this wasn't about saving a celebrity, it was about protecting a legacy. Tupac wasn't just an artist, he was the son of a movement. His verses about defiance, his lyrics about fighting the system, made him more than entertainment. He was a symbol they couldn't afford to let be silenced. That's where Michael Nice enters, with a story that reads like a movie script. He claimed Tupac boarded a private jet surrounded by Panther operatives, the atmosphere tense like a prison break. According to Nice, the crew was tight himself, his brother, the pilot, Tupac acting as co-pilot, and 2 Panthers on board. Once the plane lifted off, he said, the relief was instant. It felt like escaping a cage.
Kept flying by, so we knew something was going on. We just started following them.
Right.
2 young paramedics
I was driving.
were working nearby.
I had been a medic for roughly 5 years.
I was 22 years old.
Jim and Shane, now Henderson firefighters, have asked us not to use their last names because they're concerned about their safety. They're speaking publicly about that night for the first time.
Jim and I did everything that we could and gave him every ample, but the general public doesn't know that.
The Tupac Shakur remains unsolved. But 20 years later, Jim and Shane describe an effort to save the 25-year-old man's life. Here at the scene, they stumbled onto.
The chaos, there was a lot of chaos, a lot of cop cars.
Just as we started looking at each other to decide what we were doing, Metro told us to come in. They were waving us to come in.
And then exiting their ambulance.
Somebody met me at the back and said, go help my buddy. And in my buddy's car. So
which ended up being Suge Knight. Whole car, was riddled with bullet holes.
Death Row Records co-founder Suge Knight was the driver of the BMW Shakur was.
And here's the wildest part. Michael Nice claimed the operation wasn't some desperate last-minute stunt, it was sanctioned. According to him, Fidel Castro himself approved the escape, but under strict conditions: stay silent, never reveal the truth, and avoid any exposure that could drag Cuba into an international scandal. The story often draws a chilling comparison to Jeffrey Epstein. One commentator summed it up bluntly: Epstein had tapes and leverage on powerful figures, politicians, entertainers, businessmen. And then came the question everyone already knows. Do you really believe Epstein ended his own life? The implication is clear when the stakes are that high. The truth rarely plays out in plain sight. But just as Nice promised to release hard proof, news broke of his sudden death. To fans who followed his claims, the timing was far too convenient. Was it failing health, bad luck, or was he silenced to keep the truth about Tupac buried forever? Even his colleagues admitted it looked suspicious. His disappearance closed the door on any documents, tapes, or testimony that might have surfaced. And when someone that close to the fire suddenly vanishes, suspicion doesn't fade, it spreads. What Nice revealed before his death only deepened the mystery. He spoke of a body switch inside the hospital, large sums of money exchanged, and even a double stage to play the role of a lifeless Tupac. He described the moment of relief as their jet touched down in Barbados before the final transfer to Cuba. If his story was true, then the entire Vegas spectacle was just theater, an elaborate illusion for cameras and headlines. In this version, the Panthers supplied the muscle, Castro provided the sanctuary, and Tupac himself delivered the deception, a perfect trinity of survival. Nice once said he couldn't wait for people to finally uncover what had really been happening behind the scenes. That statement still echoes, fueling speculation about what he is, knew, and why he was silenced. But life in exile isn't as glamorous as the rumors make it sound. For Tupac, who thrived on crowds, creativity, and constant reinvention, decades of hiding wouldn't be a tactic, it would be a punishment. Exile demands invisibility, and invisibility suffocates. Stripped of the roar of the crowd, the adrenaline of the stage, and the pulse of his own movement, every day in hiding would chip away at who he once was. Psychologists describe long isolation as a kind of rebirth. You don't emerge the same person. For Tupac, that transformation could have been profound. His art was always rooted in rebellion and survival, but exile might have sharpened those instincts into paranoia, distrust, and the constant fear of betrayal. After decades of watching the world evolve without him, perhaps his fire didn't burn out, but change no longer a blaze, but a slow, relentless ember. And even in lighter conversations, the shadow of Diddy always lingered. Asked if their rivalry was real, one voice brushed it off as competitiveness. But when pressed, "So you and Puff, you're cool?" the hesitation spoke louder than any answer.
The same people that Puffy, Biggie, and Bad Boy was using as protection when they came to LA, it's the same people that just happened to get into a fight with Tupac in Vegas. To me, man, that's a hell of a coincidence, man. I don't know about that yet.
I don't think anything is coincidental. Why would you tell the littlest in the crew that these are the guys who took my chain? It's over there on the other side of the casino, by the elevators. Why you didn't go tell Suge? Why you didn't tell one of the bouncers, one of the securities, one of the bodyguards? Did anybody ever question him? Why you gonna tell the man who make all the money for us? That's a setup. They was setting that boy up, man. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Me and Puffy, we was friends. So understand one thing. In the streets, when you're known as the best, you become a trophy. Everybody wants the trophy.
That leaves us with one haunting question. If Tupac stepped out of hiding today, would anyone truly recognize him? Not just in his face, changed by decades, but in the man he's become. Could years of silence preserve his ideals or transform them into something unrecognizable? Maybe the real shock wouldn't be that he's alive, but that exile has forged a figure carrying truths too heavy for the stage he once commanded. And that's where the story collides with Diddy again. Some whispers claim he gave Tupac an ultimatum: vanish or face permanent elimination. The $1 million bounties weren't just rumors, they were warnings. In that light, Tupac's disappearance wasn't weakness, it was survival. And the greatest irony of all, the mogul who believed he erased his rival may have created the very conditions that allowed him to live on. For decades, Diddy flaunted untouchable wealth, crowning himself king, while investigators circled and accusers multiplied. And yet, in the background, the man he feared most may have been watching, waiting, collecting evidence. Some believe Tupac has a hidden vault of recordings, testimonies, and accounts that, if revealed, could obliterate Diddy's defenses. Others insist he's been carefully plotting a return, waiting for the moment that would strike like a thunderclap. And with Diddy's empire now in flames, prosecutors closing in, and former allies breaking ranks, that moment may be closer than ever. So the question is this: if Tupac re-emerges, would his very presence collapse the last pieces of Diddy's empire? Could he reveal a hidden history that rewrites everything we thought we knew about the East Coast-West Coast War? Or would his return unleash chaos, proving just how far power went to bury the truth? If that day comes, it won't just rewrite music history, it will detonate cultural history in real time. But what do you believe? Could Tupac step out of the shadows and shake the industry to its core? Or is this the greatest illusion hip-hop has ever seen? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you enjoyed this breakdown, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive stories.